Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience, from physical to psychological to medical to spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast to become more aware and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society. In the creative space, within the social space, and the purpose, our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here, and I'm looking forward to exploring this potential as we move forward. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of The Best Medicine with Bradley H. Werrell, D.O., your host. That's me. Today we're going to have a discussion with Joseph Kleman, the founder of MOVE, an innovative therapeutic intervention for the body-mind. We're going to hope to discover between us some secret pathway which might make his innovations in healthcare and healthiness find their way to the average citizen and go forward from there. Thank you for joining me. So it's like this, there's a psychologist that I had a discussion with, Dr. Greg Enriquez. He's at JMU in Virginia.
Okay.
And he talks about this as what we're interfacing with. He calls it digital consciousness, okay? So we're figuring out how to interact in a digital way, which is different than any other way we ever interacted, like the analog way. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. No, it's really like it's played with my mind because I've gone, so long without screens and everything, and now everybody I talk to for the most part is on a screen. And it's so weird because like when I do my stuff, like I know that I'm doing randomized things in front of a camera that I've never done before, in front of a bunch of people watching me. So it's this weird thing of like, I know they're observing me do things I've never done before, where I normally observe them do things they've never done before.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's a weird mind play of like, I'm getting the same effect they're getting at the exact same time because we're both doing it in front of each other. So yeah, so it's been very interesting adjustment to all of this. So
yeah, I'm agreeing, and I'm like, okay, just kind of fake it and try to make it, right?
Yeah, I just keep like a friend of mine said this the other day because we were talking about it, and she goes, they were talking about like founders and creating businesses and stuff like that, and she said this phrase, and it's been ruminating in my head now for a few days. And she said it. She goes, most people don't create as slow as nature does.
That's right. Our clock speed's way high.
Right. We want something faster. We want it now. And I realized like how long I've been creating one thing for 13 years. And I'm like, I've been like, not really in a hurry because I don't have the drive for money as what most people do because I already hit the money point once. So for me, it was more about the change. For me, it was more about like, how long can I keep building something and try to create some sort of lasting change?
That's right. That's right. So, transformation is the interesting thing.
Yeah, no, it has been. Like when the pandemic happened, it hit me. I was like, you know what? no matter what happens out of this, nobody can take away what I've learned from it.
That's right. That's right.
Because they can take away my business, they can bankrupt me, they can do whatever they want. But I'm going to push and push and push and push as hard as I can through this whole thing. And no matter what happens at the other end of this, like, you can't take that away from me.
That's right.
So
that's right. So we should introduce you a little bit.
Yeah.
Joseph Kleman, tell us about yourself a little bit so that people can have a clue as to what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Joe Kleman. I have a very strong background in logistics. So my family owned an event company. We had tents and tables and chairs. I worked in catering for quite a while, and wedding planning and decor. So like my whole world was putting people's parties together, or like working with people in more of a logistical or more of a variable situation. So it's figuring out the math of how many people can be in a space and move comfortably around and all that. So that's an important piece to like where the rest of this comes in at. So I spent 2 years in the military in the Navy. And then after that, I got a job doing supply chain logistics for Kohl's department stores. And then I moved into I moved to the Tacoma area where the corporate office was. And I started doing freight for Coke and Pepsi for their bottling plants and for printing presses in Canada. So all my freight would pick up in Washington State and deliver into Canada on GIT freight. So it was all production line shutdown freight across the border. So there was a huge variable there that you had to navigate. And then I did all the freight for the Portland local area, and then the Pier 1 import freight coming out of Southern California into Oregon. So I had three geographical locations that I was moving. I had 50 drivers that worked for me. At one point, I had about 30 when I was in Washington. So it was learning the leadership of people while you're also moving things around, and moving objects around, and moving, getting things to where they're supposed to be at from point A to point B. So it was taking everything I learned from event planning and being in that creative process of like planning somebody's parties, and then learning how to understand people. So I had my first crew of guys that worked for me, for my family, when I was 16 years old. So I had 4 people that we would just go out on a crew, and I would handle I was the guy in charge. So I learned so much of that. So when I started logistics, I was 20 years old, and I had 45 guys that were at least double, if not triple my age.
Right. Challenging. So that's very challenging.
That's very challenging, because now you're trying to earn trust from people that, I could be their child or grandchild, essentially. So that was a very interesting experience.
I'm sure they tested you some.
Oh yeah. No, and that was the thing, is like, by the time I was done, like I had the lowest turnover rate in the company as a manager. I had a 99% delivery on time on all of my accounts. So like, they would just put me aside in my desk, and they're like, they would never talk to me, because they're like, you're making us like $15 million a year. I don't have to say anything to you, and we don't have to hire anybody. So you just keep doing whatever you're doing over there, and we're not going to worry about you.
That's right. Nobody messes with success, right?
Exactly. So going from that, at 26, I was taken out of work in an ambulance because they thought I was having a heart attack. And it was a severe panic attack.
Oh my.
And that point, it was kind of like my first realization of like, I was always taught to specialize and to work hard and like keep going and like don't stop and like just, do the best you can all the time. So that's what I was doing. I kept taking on more and more responsibilities. Well, it burned me out. Well, then that was the first piece of it. And the second piece of it, I went to try to ask them about an increase in pay. And they're like, well, we'll do a review, bullet point what you want, like what you do every day, so we know exactly what you're working on and all this. And I kept taking on more projects. I was doing a communication system for them while I was doing all the scheduling, and then I was doing all the border paperwork and all the procedural stuff for that, on top of all the scheduling, on top of the communication system. And I was doing all this in a 12-hour day. And when I explained all that to them, the phrase I got was, well, you're already doing pretty good for your age.
Oh, that's rude.
That is
And
just so rude.
And that was the second piece. And I was like, I shut it down. I never did a single thing extra after that. I was like, I went into like this bare minimum,
That's
lock
right.
it down. Like, you know what? If you're not going to appreciate everything I've been doing at all, then I'm just not going to do it.
That's right. That was the right answer.
Yeah.
So they taught you by negligence.
Yeah. So it was probably less than a year after that. I stayed for a little bit longer trying to figure out, you know, what it was I was trying to do. And I cleaned my desk out on a Friday and then walked in on Monday morning. I sent a 2-page type email to the owner of the company and I resigned and sold everything I had. I had 2 houses, a new car. I was making roughly $65,000 a year and hadn't really saved anything because that was another thing I didn't ever learned as a kid was finances.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no money. I had no plan. I sold everything I owned down to my SUV and about 12 to 15 boxes of stuff. And the very next year I made $12,000.
You got skinny, man, real skinny.
Got real skinny. I was like, it's time to get mobile. And I just like threw it all away. I was like, I had all these things. I had a house rented out that I built when I was 20. I had, you know, the house in Washington State. I had home theater systems and like toys and new cars, like the whole thing. But I had no happiness.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the American dream. Like, this is what everybody like works so hard for. And I was like, now I have to do this for 40 more years. So something didn't add up to me. And I was like, there has to be more to life than this like rat race of like chasing money and like not getting anything out of it.
That's right.
So my goal was to move to the Caribbean. So I was trying to figure out, well, how do you make money in the Caribbean? Because it's very expensive down there. I spent a lot of vacations in Jamaica and in, mostly in Jamaica a few different times and stuff. But I was like, well, how about massage therapy? Like, why don't I go and I'll spend a year. I'll make sure it's exactly what I want to do. Went to massage school, spent 11 and a half months there, graduated with honors. And then a month later, I was headed to St. Thomas. I was like moving down there. And I spent 4 months down there and ended up getting into, it's funny, they tell you when you get down there that the island will tell you when it's time to leave. So it was early December and I was driving to work on a motorcycle that someone lent me that I was borrowing from somebody down on the island. Driving to work on my motorcycle to pick up a paycheck to buy a car when I got hit by a car on my motorcycle. So I ended up having a bimal fracture of my left ankle. I did a full lateral rotation of my ankle.
Oh, that hurts just thinking about it, man.
Yeah. So I had, so the paramedic, when he got there and I was like, I knew it was broke. Like I could look at it and know it was broke. It was like, I know it's not supposed to go that way. He goes, yeah, we don't know that yet. We don't have any x-rays. I was like, you're not trying to kid me. Like so pretty sure like I know. Yeah. So the whole hospital experience down there is an insane story on its own. From the time the car hit me, that was the first time. By the time I got to surgery, my ankle had been hit 5 times. Once from the paramedic, 2 from the nurses, like x-ray techs. Like I was like, oh my God. It was like, I felt like Leslie Nielsen. I was like trying to like just stay back because everything was like something was going to hit it again.
Oh my.
Yeah. So then went into surgery. I woke up, you know, I had a spinal. So it was the first time I ever had a spinal. I woke up the next morning. I couldn't feel anything from the waist down. And I was like, that was the weirdest experience to start with. But then they came in at 6 a.m. They're like, you're free to go whenever you want. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
Yeah. So I had no clothes, nobody to pick me up or anything. And then I was like, well, I don't have anything. And they're like, well, stay as long as you need to stay. And, you know, you can go whenever you want. Well, I ended up having to ask them for crutches. They weren't even going to give me crutches. They were telling me how to like walk out of there.
Wow.
What I couldn't do.
Wow.
So literally in less than 24 hours, I was back out of the hospital with this giant broken leg that I had no idea what was going on.
How'd that ankle turn out?
Well, I ended up doing, I'm an experimental person. That's kind of what drove me into everything I do now. But I did all of my own physical therapy on my ankle. So I got back up to Ohio And it had been 10 days since surgery. And I called my family physician. I was like, hey, look, like, here's the story. I don't want to unwrap my leg without being somewhere where someone can do something if it's like not in a good shape.
Right.
So he unwraps my leg and he goes, yep, never seen anything like it before in my life. He goes, you might want to go to the ER.
Whoa.
So I took pictures of it, and I was taking pictures of it, and I almost blacked out. And I was like, because gory things don't usually bother me. He goes, but it's different when it's on your own body and you're seeing your own appendage looking like this.
Wow.
So I got to the VA and they're like, well, it's going to be a couple hours so we could see you. And I was like, oh yeah, the pictures. I was like, well, this is what it looks like. And they're like, hold on a second. And then like 20 minutes later, I was back in a room and I had every nurse the entire night coming into my room to see what my leg looked like.
Yeah.
And by the time the surgeon got there, he was like, yeah, based on what you did to it, that's pretty much what it should look like. So,
Wow.
but yeah, it was quite an experience for sure.
So then what did you end up doing? Then you're a massage therapist, you're back in the States now, you're now recovering your leg. And then that's probably been 13, 14 years ago?
Yeah, that was 2009. So
Okay.
yeah, about 11 years ago now. And so I was back and I was just kind of like not really sure what to do. I was in like I punctured the peripheral nerve right in the front of the ankle. So I had a lot of crazy nerve pain right in the beginning. So it took almost 4 months before I was able to walk on it. Because I went to the VA wanted to put a hard cast on it. And I was like, something doesn't seem right about that. So I went to my cousin that's a PA in orthopedics. And he goes, well, my guy will babysit it for you and then make sure everything's okay and do the x-rays and let you know when you can walk on it again. But that way it won't cost you that much. So he did the x-rays. He goes, well, everything's where it's supposed to be. And they used they used the hardware that, where it's supposed to be, but the hardware is about half the size of what we would have used up here. So I had to stay off of it that much longer. But I think the benefit, and I play this out in my head because I think the benefit I got from them not using as big of hardware was the prognosis they gave me up here was 50 to 60% range of motion. And when I went back to the VA, because there was a screw that goes to the tib fib to stabilize it, and some take it out and some leave it in, I was like, well, can we consider taking it out? And they do an x-ray at the VA and she goes, well, we're not going to take the screw out because you already broke it in half. So I snapped that screw in half from all the movement I was doing on that leg.
Yeah.
And but she asked me, she goes, who did your PT? And I was like, I did. Because I had almost 90% of my range of motion back instead of 50 or 60. So I think by not having as big of hardware in there,
yeah,
it gave my leg freedom to like move more. And I never stopped moving it. And I think that's one of the things, we wait too long for PT to start. Like from some of these injuries, because the surgeon told me, he goes, with as much hardware that's in there, you could walk on it right now, but I don't suggest it. But like, it's not going to fall apart now because it's screwed together. So I don't think we start soon enough with some of it, because I know so many people that have like pins or something in their feet or their ankles, and they wait 6 weeks or 8 weeks until some of the stuff comes off.
Down.
Yeah, before they start moving. And I was like, I can't say that we need to change that, but like in my personal experience, I was wiggling my toes. I was doing, they did a study with the Olympic team that if you exercise, like say my left leg was broke, that if you exercise the right leg, the opposite leg, as much as you can, the peripheral nerves mirror each other. And you retain more of your muscle mass than if you didn't do anything at all. So when I went back to the surgeon for the last time and he said I could walk on it, I could literally stand on my broken leg by itself with full body weight. Like the first time I was off crutches, because I had done so much movement in the course of healing. And I was like, why don't we start people sooner doing some of these things? We wait so long, and then now you're trying to get somebody back out of all of this like rigidity and this fear of movement.
That's right. So what project are you working on now? What's going on? So
I've been mixing my logistics experience and observing of people with massage therapy. And I got really bored with massage pretty quickly over a few years because of the teachers I had. We never worked on the back. They're like, the back is just a symptom. They're like, most of the problems are on the front of the body, not on the back. The back is just our turtle shell.
Huh.
So most of the work I do massage wise, because I do think there's value in manual therapy.
Right.
But I think we overuse manual therapy in the way that we're not activating or moving the organism.
Right.
Or the human.
That's right.
So,
It's a passive, receptive thing for the person who's being worked on. And it's like,
yeah.
you're not causing them to be active and to activate that which is being neglected. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, most people are very sedentary already, and then you're having them lay there on a table, and you're sticking needles in them, or you're scraping them with tools. And I've tried all that stuff. I've been through I wanted to know what works and what didn't work, and I just kept like, I'm a logistics guy, so I just keep collecting information and trying it out for a while. And then I'm like, wait, like the result only lasts for 2 or 3 hours or a day or not at all.
That's right.
So then I would take that and I'm like, okay, so I'll try it for a few months. I'll get my experience of it. And I'm like, no, I don't. My opinion was if it didn't last for a couple of weeks, then it wasn't really that valid.
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting. Because to me, it's like the issue was when I was in massage therapy school, and that was in '87. We had a clinic there that, and it's like the people would come in with this a kind of like a characteristic set of dents in their physique, and you'd hammer them out and straighten them out. Then they'd come back in a week and they'd look the same. I'm like, whoa, that's messed up. What is going on here?
Yeah.
And so it's a failure of transformation, and they're using you to do what they could otherwise do, but they don't want to change their patterns of behavior that generate this characteristic frame.
Right. That's why I was here, like trying to get new clients or whatever. Like, well, I always go to the same therapist. I've been to the same therapist for 10 years because they know my knots. And I was like, but why do you still have the same knots you've had for 10 years? Like, I was like, I never understood that. I was like, you wouldn't go to the same doctor for 10 years if he kept you sick.
It's like that. You do understand it. That's what's the difference between you and the other therapy people, right?
Yeah. So I have this.
It's not interesting to do the same job every week.
No, like, because I see, like, I stay on the massage therapy boards on Facebook just to see, like, where the industry is going and, like, how people are reacting to certain things and whatever, but I can't be part of it. My girlfriend says it all the time. She goes, you need to keep removing yourself from that industry. And it saddens me because I think there's a lot of value in that industry. I think it's misguided some.
When I was in it, it was interesting because they were working on, it was centralization of authority, like authoritarian, to generate boards and rules to regulatory function of massage to kind of limit the amount of people that are entering into the field. So it's kind of like standardized it. And I was like, oh, this is a problem. This is the problem right here, because it's just turning into cookie cutter.
And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So by the time I got in there, it was like, teach this. And it was like, do this, 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 and this. So the one thing that always aggravates me, because I'm very customized, like I want precision customized medicine for people. Like that's my goal. Like that's my ultimate goal. And I'd watch these posts on the massage boards, and they're like, yeah, the client came in that was trying to tell me what I should do. And like, it was trying to break up my routine. I have this thing that I do every single time. I do it this way. I work on this arm and then this arm and this leg and this leg. And I'm like, but it's not your time. Your patient, your client is paying you.
That's right.
To do that, to help them. And you're complaining because they disrupted your flow or your specific way you want to do it.
Right. So you're not being reflective. You're being authoritative.
You're an operator. You're just being an operator.
That's right. A machine. It's just a machine could do that job.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, no, like with my clients, I was like, you're paying me for 60 minutes of time. And if you're happy when you leave because we had a conversation for 60 minutes and now you feel better, then that's your time. That's what you paid for.
That's right. I like that.
So that was how I handled it. I was like, whether I touch you or don't touch you, or we have a conversation or like it's a half and half or whatever, but you're engaged, right? So like, There's just, Chris Voss wrote a book, Never Split the Difference. He was a FBI hostage negotiator. And he said this in the very first part of the book. He goes, a lot of people think listening is passive. He goes, listening is one of the most active things we do as people. because you're trying to listen to understand how the other person's feeling. You're trying to listen to understand what they're trying to get from the experience they're having with you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're like in a mutually reflective mode.
Yeah.
Of interaction and generating the change in both parties.
Yeah. Like what am I doing to try to help you? How can I help you? Right. What am I learning from you? So I have my clients journal a lot. They'll come in with their journals like, yeah, so I had this rough day a couple of weeks ago. Let me go back to see what I wrote that day. And they'll read me their journal of like, yeah, I took a hike and I did this many miles. And like, I did more hills that day than not. And like, we go through their experience of the last couple of weeks. So I said this on a podcast I did with a PT recently. And I was like, because I think I mentioned the other day when we chatted briefly last Friday, but I was like, because I work with a lot of chronic pain people and people that have been in pain for 5, 10, up to 40 years. And I always ask this question. I asked this to them the other day. I was like, how are you going to help somebody that has chronic pain if you never find out if they feel safe living in the home they're in? How do you know if they're not afraid for their life every time they go home? Whether they're being physically abused,
right?
But what if they're being mentally or emotionally abused? Or maybe their house is not clean, right? So there's this organism that is trying to find safety through self-preservation. That's our whole nervous system is safety. So here's this system that's trying to find safety, and there's nothing but clutter and dirt and germs or an abusive spouse, or maybe they have 5 kids as a single parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you never asked them any of that. You're just trying to figure out, why do you hurt so bad? But you don't find out their environment they're living in.
That's right.
So it's like a dog chasing its tail, because you're trying to ask them questions based on what they're willing to give you, but you're not listening to what they're saying. You're not digging deeper into like what their life consists of.
That's right.
And I think that's where we miss some of that by not having the intervals of time in between our sessions. There's not good active listening, and there's not like you're thinking about, I have this next patient already, but I haven't even finished my thoughts of the previous patient. So there's no, like, in my world, like, I want enough time in between sessions to where each patient or each client is getting the exact same level of service.
Okay.
And if there's no break in between sessions or people, then you're not truly, because here's the PT still putting equipment away from the last session going, oh, just jump on that bike real quick. I'll be with you in a second.
Right.
Why isn't your room reset?
That's right.
Prior to the next person coming in going, now you have my full attention. How can I help you?
Right. That's right. It's a tough world. And it's like it's commercial function, that's where it's the interference pattern comes in.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, because everybody's like, well, they're optimizing their productivity in monetary terms, right?
Right. But are we really doing what our job is? We're truly helping somebody that.
It's interesting. And it's like the question sort of would shoot down to economic question, which is like, you get what you pay for, right? And it's like, okay, how much do I charge for my time? Is the query that would come out from the professional side, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, and it's like, okay, then it's the almighty dollar speaking loud, and some ethical considerations being left by the wayside,
Yeah.
And
I think two of my favorite books. I'm only like a part way into the one that I've now reread. I'm at the same chapter I've been for the last like 3 times I got to this point. But Eric Topol's book, Deep Medicine.
Okay.
It's about basically the tag on the book is like, can AI make healthcare human again? Okay. And then
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. It's talking about all the things basically that the example I really like is in the beginning of the book, where he talks about, we already have listening devices that we use every single day. We have these like Alexa bots and whatever, right?
Right.
Well, why couldn't a device listen to everything that you and the patient are saying, right? Instead of you having to take notes and listen to the patient and look up what's going on, and you're not actively listening to what's going on, you're not having a good conversation. But why can't the AI listen to what you're saying, send out the information across the web, all the medical journals, all the access to everything that's out there in regards to medicine, taking away personal experience and coming back with 5 possible diagnoses based on the average of the percentage that somebody could possibly have that diagnosis. And then you as a person, through personal experience, and you go, based on my personal experience, here's what I think we should start with. Right? So that's taking some of the job. It's still allowing you to be human with your patient, but the machine's listening to what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good digital interface. Interesting. That's kind of where I was with, in 87, I became aware of the emotional connection with the musculoskeletal tension patterns, and interested in using machines to measure that and then interact with the physicality like that, help the people to activate the neglected portions of their physique to generate this similar thing, but on a more physical level, as opposed to providing information like that.
Yeah.
And that's all, but it's like, okay, we're at this cusp of just the potential to do just what seems crazy science fiction stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it'll happen. I get nervous about it though, because it's like, what right now it's like, we're in the middle of a war of titanic proportions, which is the people who want to maintain control and ownership interest over everything are seeking to gather that same information and use it to keep the populace from throwing off their shackles.
Yeah. Well, and that's what that comes into a lot of what I'm working on, because when I mentioned that quote the other day on Friday, like Nikola Tesla said, most people are sick because they forgot how to play. Well, all of the stuff I've developed is based around play, right? So that we enter the flow state in playing, right? Children live in the flow state. They don't know any other way other than, I think they said like most children can't determine the difference between imagination and reality until they're past 6 years old. So that's why they have the imaginary friends. That's why they see, they can talk about, have you ever seen the post where the kids talk about their past lives?
I have not ever watched it like that, man.
They're incredible. If I find I shared one on Facebook not that long ago, and the kids were talking about like this 3-year-old or 4-year-old was like, oh yeah, I was this guy in London. We got shot in a back alley and I got robbed for my stuff or whatever. And like, they're very matter of fact. They remember all these intricate details of their former lives. Huh. And it's very fascinating. Yeah, they're very connected to that.
Yeah. So
as I started
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, tell me about your other work. That I'm interested in your other work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole idea of it was what I first started doing was noticing that we needed to move more, right? That was getting away from the whole sedentary thing. I was tired of people coming in, laying there on the table and going, why doesn't this thing change? So then I got into studying for about 3 or 4 years, studying muscle testing.
Yes, very strange. That's so strange, that stuff, man.
Yeah.
I was in a class. Doing this crazy therapy called amino neuro frequency medicine. Okay. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And it's like, okay, so we go to this class. I got referred to go to this class by a guy. He's a Dr. Porman, John Porman. He's in Tempe, Arizona, and we have a patient, and the guy's he's a matter of fact guy, and he goes, he does this crazy stuff. He puts these plastic discs on you, and your pain goes away. And I'm like, that's ridiculous, okay? And I'm like, that's the most ridiculous shit ever. Okay, so I'm like, okay, so talk to Porman, had him work on me, and it's like, whoa, there's something going on here that doesn't make any sense, okay? He goes, go to the class. So we went to the class, and so in the class, it's like this. So you get the person comes in there, and we had a variety of people. So there were some massage therapists, some people who did physical therapy, and then I'm a physician. So I'm like, okay, so I'm just watching this, and I'm watching this, and they're bringing people in, and then we test them, and then we go, where are we going to put these little plastic discs? And there's different kinds, and there's little rules for how you do it, how to think about it, and it's okay. And then I witnessed 100% of people get 90% or more pain reduction from something that has no scientific explanation that has any meaning whatsoever. And I'm like, for 3 days, I'm sitting there going like this, how the hell can I ethically be able to introduce this into my medical practice and not get in trouble with the board, right?
Right. Yeah.
I said, I figured it out on the third day. I'm like, it's a placebo, okay? And it's like this, placebo effect is 30%. So it's not a placebo, and I know it's not a placebo, but I call it a placebo so I don't get in trouble for doing something that I can't explain scientifically, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this, so like, it's utterly fascinating. It's like, what does that mean? There is something going on with intentionality, and some of the things they were doing was, and it was blew my mind, the muscle testers, right? They poke the place, and then they test the muscle again. Oh, that's the place where you put the dot.
Oh, so it's therapy localization. That's
Yeah,
like
and it's like but the muscle testing thing was funny because it's like the muscle tester, and she was quite excellent. She's down in Florida somewhere, and she's doing this, and she goes, oh, here's what she said, and it blew my mind. It took me years to figure out what she meant. She goes, he thinks his back is his butt. I'm like, what does that mean? So he's neglecting his butt and using his back as a substitute for the kinetic chain, the posterior chain.
Okay, yeah, because like a lot of people, that's why I don't really like the bridge exercise that they use. Like a lot of times when people are having low back pain, they have them do bridges in PT, and I was like, but most people are lifting from their back. They're not. You think they're exercising their glutes, and I'm sure you're getting some glute recruitment
right
there, but you're using that hinge, right? Because that's our hinge. That's our flexion extension hinge. So one side is the low back, spinal erectors, and the other one's the glute max. But if something gets stronger, and most people's low backs are way stronger than their glutes are, then you're going to have more recruitment from the spinal erectors than you would from the glutes. And I see it all the time with people. They lift themselves or turn themselves fully engaged in their back and moving like a board. Because we don't spiral, we don't twist. So that's the biggest thing that I notice with my clients is that we don't cross our midline.
Right.
So 90% of my clients, I help in 1 or 2 sessions or 3 sessions through movement by teaching them how to twist or teaching them how to cross their midline.
Right.
Because we assume that because we learn it from in newborns as we chew on our hands. That's how our right side, left side can find the mouth. And that's how our eyes find center, is through finding our midline. Well, then we learn helping hand as children, where right hand can help left hand across our midline. And then most of technology is built with us going directly in front of us.
Right.
So we stop twisting. We don't move across ourselves. So I have a good friend of mine, which you should do a podcast with, Adam Diaper. He finished his PhD in astrophysics last year.
Oh, cool.
And he studies human movement in zero gravity.
Wow.
So, but he was explaining to me the 2 ways the human body can spin stable, which is like a helix head to toe, like a pin or like a figure skater.
Right.
Or around the navel as a pinwheel.
Right.
Like a flat spin, because you have the lateral functions keeping you in balance. You can't flip this way, you'll flip out of control. So we are a helix from the DNA all the way up to our major muscle movement is still a helix. So then last December, I meet a guy that does genetic engineering, and he goes, well, which way do we spin? And I was like, well, I have no idea. He goes, watch figure skaters. He goes, over 90% of them spin left. So our natural spin of our DNA and of us is to spin left. That's how we spin stable.
That's interesting. It's like a chirality, right? So chirality is left hand, right hand.
Okay.
So it's like most of us are right-handed.
Okay, yeah.
And left. So it's a chirality associated with it's a preference, right? Like a predisposition.
Okay. That makes sense.
And that's interesting. I never really thought about it because they do all seem to spin the same direction. It's like, Same direction.
Yeah. So then he was like, so that's why we like certain vitamins better. He goes, like vitamin E specifically, because vitamin E's genetic makeup also spins left.
I don't know what to say to that, man. I don't. It's like this. That talk like that is like chirality associated with molecules. Yeah. And it's like, so you see some things like they talk about a medicine like, say, albuterol, right? But it's like, yeah, there's chirality associated with that as well. And then you'll hear, so the alternative medicine is lev-albuterol. So they split the right and the left apart and only use the left. And the left is active in these ways, but not in these ways.
Okay.
And so it's like, so when he says that about a molecule, it's like, that kind of goes to this, these dots, man, the amino, I don't know, the frequency amino, I don't remember the name of it. The ANF dots are like, there's a piece of mylar in there, okay? And there's a mylar and it's in between a plastic cover and then adhesive, okay? So it's just this piece of mylar. And they say the mylar has been put in some kind of particle accelerator and has frequency associated with it. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't mean anything, man. I don't know what you're talking about. I just go like, okay, just pretend that it works. And I can make it work. Okay.
Yeah,
my business associate wouldn't try to do it. He goes, because it's like functions with some element of intuition and intentionality. Right, and it's a faith-based function, because I know it's going to work. And he goes, I'll screw it up, and then I'll mess it up for the patient. And I'm like, okay, so he won't do it. But it's like, what a strange thing, man. So when you say the molecule has a chirality or the spin, it's like I gotta ask what that means, because it's like our terminology is getting weak to encapsulate some meaning there that I'm not quite grasping. Right?
Yeah. No, it was mind blowing. Like, to like,
just
listen.
a trip. There's a guy, Moshe Feldenkrais. You familiar with this?
Oh yeah, Feldenkrais a lot, because that's a lot of where like my thought process comes from a lot, because there's a style of dance that Adam actually taught me, him and his girlfriend did, called contact improvisation, which is randomized instinctual movement. But instead of us doing it by ourselves, which is I do with people with the blocks or the cube that I've developed, you do it with another person. So you're having to maintain contact in a state of like counterbalance with another person.
Oh, wow.
In randomized movement. So it's basically, I always explain that as like the trust game or the trust fall, where you have to power somebody and you didn't want them to move, but in CI, they're going to move and you have to figure out where they're going as it's happening. And you're staying in this
I call it dynamic equilibrium, right?
Yeah. It's just constant. You're given this score. Like, okay, so now the two of you have to counterbalance, but you can't cross this level of height. So everything you have to do is under this level of height.
Way low down.
Yeah. So everything is controlled by imaginary spaces. And I was like, well, why can't I take a physical space and have somebody do the same thing? And that's what became of the blocks originally, which were yoga blocks.
Right.
Now I use color, like wood blocks that have 6 different colors on them. And I give people cognitive functions, like use your right hand and touch the red on all 4 blocks and your left knee and touch the blue on all 4 blocks.
Gotcha.
But the phrase that I give people when they do any of my work is that there's no rules, right or wrong way to play, and you can do anything you want. So I take away all the power I have to stop them from doing anything wrong.
Right.
So I allow the person to have complete freedom to be them.
That's crazy, Phil, man. I like it.
And it's crazy because one of the first questions you get is like, what can I do it this way? And I was like, sure, you can do it any way you want.
Yeah.
But we're so programmed, we're so trained in this idea that I always tell people that someone told me this and it was amazing because it's so matter of fact. It said your soul will never tell you something bad about yourself. The inner dialogue that's negative to you, that's you
not
hear,
you. Right? That's
not you. It's the other people's voices that you listen to.
Yeah, they're complex.
Right. So now you're going, oh, I can't do it that way though, because Bobby back in 6th grade said I'm not supposed to do it that way.
Right.
But you're not 6th grade anymore. You're 30.
It's like this. I call it permissionless system that you're creating from a authoritarian system. So you create a permissionless environment, which is to say you have the authority to do what you will, right?
Yeah. Just
And
give
then
them all the power
and so
back.
you unleash them from the authoritarian complexes that are outside there.
Yeah, because I have this phrase, like, if you watch social media right now, this my phrase will kind of break it down into like what you're watching. Like the reason we don't have a lot of creativity right now is my way is better than your way and your way sucks. But I don't have the courage to do it my way, so I'm going to make fun of your way. And now that I made fun of your way and you made fun of my way, we're both worried about each other's opinions and not of our own. And now I won't do anything at all.
That's right.
We're paralyzed in fear of everybody else's thoughts.
It's a negativity, right?
What's that?
It's just it's negativity that's driving.
Yeah, but we're stuck in this spiral now. We're stuck in this like almost like a checkmate or almost like a stalemate, because now everybody's afraid of building something or creating something because they're afraid of what other people think of them.
I understand.
They're more worried about somebody else's opinion of them than they are of their own opinion of themselves. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. I agree with that. There was a question that I had, which is you sort of touched on it with so your intrinsic seeking behavior, which is like the basic mid-level brain function, seeking activity, will it attract you to things that will harm you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think it will. I don't think it will. And it's like, but I think that you can be confused and do things or think that you're attracted to things that are harmful to you. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, I think if you ever listen to Mel Robbins, she talks about the 5-second rule that we have in our brain, where it's
the
like
5-second rule, man. That's cool.
Because you basically she goes in neuroscience. That's what she's been studying. It is that from the time you have an idea to the time you have to physically move yourself into the idea. You don't have to complete it, but you have to move into it physically. You have 5 seconds before your brain will start to create reasons why you shouldn't do it, because it's trying to protect itself. That's okay. Like, I should go for a run this morning. Well, it's probably going to rain. Like, oh, it's cold, or it's, like, I don't know. Like, there'll probably be a lot of people out there and I don't want to go out there. And then you don't go. But that was all like, you ever hear the one, we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality?
Oh, yeah. I understand that premise.
So we keep creating all of these narratives that we think are going to happen or could happen, but in the likelihood of it happening is negligible. So we just don't do anything.
That's right. It's so it is a protective function.
Yeah, it's trying to save you from doing something that your brain thinks could be harmful. But that's the idea of pushing past it. Like, she goes, count backwards from 5, and like, you have an idea, move within those 5 seconds. Like, break that barrier.
That's an interesting little tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was taught, so there's something I learned about myself over the pandemic, because a year and a half ago, somebody asked me this question. They were like, because I was explaining the cube to them. Mm-hmm. And she was like, she stopped me right in the middle of my explanation. She goes, "Are you autistic?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've never been asked that before.
Maybe. I don't know.
So over the course of the isolation and the pandemic, I started like trying to understand this, because you learn more and more about yourself, And I realized that as I started talking to more people that are Asperger's or like on the spectrum, because I always walked around with this idea in my head. I had this phrase I always told myself. I was like, I'm just a man alone in the world. Because I could see things. And I mean, I designed and built my own house when I was 20 years old. I worked my first 16-hour day when I was 12. I had my own crew of guys at 16. Like, I was doing all of these things so soon and so quick. I could figure anything out. And I was like, I don't know. I just keep like learning it, applying it, building it, learning it, applying it, and I just keep going. I've done it for 40 years.
Right.
Well, now I have a male client that's Asperger's, and him and I have some of the most amazing conversations. like, because I think in variables. I was taught to simplify through logistics for 27 years of my life. Simplify through logistics. So I took learning medicine through massage school 13 years ago and simplified through logistics, watching people. So if you really think about it anatomically, biologically, physiologically, biomechanically, geographically, we're pretty much the same person, minus
very similar.
What we look like and what our story is
Right.
The differences. But for the most part, that's why trauma surgeons can do emergency surgery, because they know where the parts are at.
That's right. It's all, the map's out the same. It's like, it's just minor variations of this theme.
Right. So as I watched so many times, so my dad almost died 11 times before he died. So I spent more time in the hospital with him than I'd not. He had a kidney transplant for 31 years. He rolled 2 fully loaded dump trucks, one end over end 3 times, one into a power pole. Like, man was like indestructible. But I kept watching the math because I was in the hospital, and I was like watching them adjust things, and I was watching him work with things. I watched people. I've observed autistic therapy. I've observed like stroke therapy, spinal cord injury therapy. Like I just kept watching medicine work on people. And it boiled down to a phrase like, whatever math makes you feel better. Right? Because you're adjusting the milligrams, you're adjusting whatever of the meds, you're adjusting the variations and the variables and whatever. So in the grand scheme of medicine, it's just math.
That's
so
right.
If you take the most people focus on the inside of the body, the inward perspective of the body and what's going on physiologically and anatomically. Well, because I focused in logistics since I was a small child and watching people as variables.
Okay.
Right? Because I don't care what your Uncle George and Aunt Mary look like. I just know that they have to fit between these 2 tables. So I don't need to know anything about them. I just need to know that they're people, and I can't control what they're doing because to me, they're uncontrolled variables.
Okay.
So we are just to me are just an uncontrolled variable moving through a space of controlled variables.
Controllable variables. How about that?
Yeah, controllable variables, right?
Okay.
Because there's all the things in your office that aren't going to move, but you are. You can do anything you want. You can hang up on me right now, and I can't expect that.
Right.
Or not expect that, right? Because I don't know. I don't have that control.
Right.
So that goes into my other phrase that I have, is that the precision of a well-designed system is predicated on the quality of the relationships of those operating it.
I'm going to repeat.
Because you can have all the best equipment, all the best data, all the best machines, all the best robots, but if all of your people walk out, you still have nothing.
That's right. That's right.
So we have to focus in medicine. We have to focus more on people. We have to focus more on the people doing the system to make the system better.
It's interesting because I had a conversation with the, so I'm working in I worked as a private practice guy and until I learned through the School of Hard Knocks. So about 13 years. So 2006, my business associate and I brought our families down to this town and bought a practice and tried to be private practice guys and learned that you can't do it in America. Be in private practice, small business doctors. So we got our ass handed to us and crunched up and beat up and ended up selling out to the hospital. Now we work for the hospital system.
Okay,
we're employed physicians. Same doctors operating in the same building with the same patients get paid. The hospital gets 3.5 times the amount of money that they were giving us to do the same job as cost. It's like, it's unimaginable. Like that was the way it is and it's going to be is just unimaginable. So it's like, okay, we accept that. So now we work in the hospital system and it's like this. I study the information flow in the hospital, okay, from the managerial point of view. And so here's my explanation of it, which is like, it took me operating in this environment to be able to provide this analysis to you, okay? So at the bottom level, there's the people that are the surface where the people are interfacing with the population, okay? At the basement level, which is all the people that are being managed by the managerial structure above, right?
Right.
Okay, so it's like information has to travel up a chain of managers to get to the apex of the managerial pyramid, and then back down the chain to inform the workers how they're supposed to be managed, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the telephone game. So
right, no, exactly.
Information cannot make it up the hill and have any fidelity with any precision with what's regarding how to manage any particular problem at the basement level of the structure. Therefore, the answer that comes down the hill in a distorted fashion is the wrong answer in all conditions. So the people operating at the bottom can only make mistakes. And the only thing that the upper management can do with any precision is to know who made the mistake and how much to punish them. So it's just punishment comes down the hill. So everybody's operating in fear and within parameters that are poorly understood. And so that irritates the staff at the bottom level.
Absolutely. I watch it all the time. I have a lot of nurse, my family's all, my sister's a respiratory therapist. My other sister's an RN. I have plenty of clients that are one's been at Duke for 30 years as a nurse.
Yeah.
You know, and hearing like her stories of like, you know, we're timed we have to have each of these events should take a certain amount of time. I'm like, so you're supposed to, the system's predicting that in room 131, the patient's going to have a heart attack at 8:34 a.m. and you need to be ready for it, because that way you have time to get to the next room and do this next thing in time, or you're going to get in trouble.
That's right. So the staff is always under stress, and their fur is being rubbed the wrong way by management. It's unavoidable.
Right.
Because the management doesn't have the pixelation is too low. They can't correct for all the details that are occurring. So the staff is then interfacing with the population that they're supposed to be treating, and they can't do it correctly because they can't be managed correctly. So the patients are unhappy.
Right.
And
you're not providing care.
And what happens is that a static charge develops somewhere in the population, and every once in a while they arc, and it arcs. And the arc looks like they're mad enough to make a complaint, and so they can complain to management. And management can't fix the problem really. So it's like, it's all just this irritating system that costs too much to operate and provides results that are suboptimal, right?
Right. You've gotten too big. You've lost the integrity of it, because so that was the other book I was going to mention, Andrew Yang, his book called The War Against the Normal People. And he talks about AI and automation and the loss of jobs and the UBI and all that.
Andrew Yang, and say the
Andrew Yang, he was a presidential candidate.
Oh, okay. What is the name of this book?
The War Against the Normal People.
Okay. We'll put
Really
references in the show.
He has a foundation he works with, helping entrepreneurs in like Detroit and Baltimore and Atlanta and all these places. But he's lived in Silicon Valley. So they call Silicon Valley the bubble, because they're basically a decade ahead of us in technology already. So he used the quote in his book, and I saw it in Tim Ferriss's book that he wrote back in the 90s, but it said, we already live in the future, it's just not evenly distributed yet.
Oh, that's a very interesting premise right there. I like it.
Because, you know, we're already working on quantum computers.
Right.
Right. But when I attended a summit back in the fall for the rural counties in North Carolina, I thought it was going to be city people trying to help the small people, but it was all the small people there saying what they needed. And it was fascinating to hear, you know, in my office, I have 300 megabits per second, you know, business class internet. They're like, well, can we help you with like co-working spaces or whatever? And they're like, the fastest internet we can get in our town is 2 megabits per second.
Wow.
And that's 30 or 40 miles away from me. There are people that still do not have internet, but Silicon Valley is building quantum computers
That's right.
So, you know, yes, we already have the future, but how can we help the people that don't have it? How do you start to redistribute that?
That's a good question. You're leaving me with more questions.
Well, good. We do this again.
Yeah, I think we have to do that. I'm like, I'm swamped, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, what we'll do is I'll make sure we get the show notes in there, and then these references, and I wanna see what you do, like this cubes and all these other things. I'm curious.
Absolutely. Yeah, we just have to get people playing more, and then you know the cubes and the blocks and everything. When I talked to the guy in London, the neuroscientist in London, I'll send you some more information about him. He's absolutely fascinating. But he's like, the therapy piece of it has to stay person to person, because we have to have the witnessing of human to human interaction to heal from it.
I like it.
But But to go into the human performance aspect through speed and agility and cognition, we can do that with machine learning. So then we can take someone that's now healed to a certain point and allow the machine to learn from them.
Right.
And continue them through evolution as long as they want, as fast as they want.
I like it. I like it. Very interesting
So, yeah.
work, and looking forward
Right,
to
sir.
Learning more about it soon, sir.
Absolutely. Let's plan another one. I got to get off here, and I got an appointment here starting soon. So
It's nice to talk to you. Okay.
Absolutely. We'll talk again soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
That was Joseph Kleman visiting us at another episode of The Best Medicine with your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.